So as we both know, most home improvement companies have a lead conversion problem, but it starts before the sales appointment ever happens. See, the first person that your lead ever talks to isn't actually trained in sales. They're trained in admin in most cases. And that there is exactly what is killing your show rate. So in this video, I'm going to walk through exactly how you can stop losing leads on that first call and how to train your intake team to think and operate like closers, even if they never actually step into the home. So to kind of start with the core issue, most contractors put their worst salesperson on the phone first. Now, it's fair to say that you wouldn't send your weakest closer into the home and expect them to win a job, right? So why would the first voice that your lead hears be that person? See, your intake team is often the least trained, least confident, and most overlooked part of the entire sales system. This first call isn't just a logistics call, it's the first sales interaction, right? Because what you have to remember is that when a homeowner reaches out to you, they're oftentimes relatively emotionally charged. Something actually pushed them to fill out that form or make that call, and that momentum needs to be transferred, not taken away. So what should your intake reps be doing? Well, first, they need to build trust in the first 10 seconds of the call. Their tone, their pacing, their confidence, it all matters just as much as what they say. The second, they need to be qualifying the lead without interrogating them. So that means asking the right questions in a natural way, kind of like a conversation rather than it coming across like a checklist. They also need to make sure that they're accurately framing the value of the visit. The homeowner shouldn't feel like they're just kind of booking in a time and place for someone to come out and do a quote. They need to feel like they're getting expert guidance during that time. Additionally, intake reps should get commitment from both homeowners, not just the one they called. And finally, they need to be preventing objections before they even happen, because we've all heard that we're just looking, or my husband won't be around, or that we're just not ready yet, right? But these can actually be softened or avoided if they're handled early on in the intake call. Now, one thing I want everyone that's watching to remember is that the appointment is not the goal. The goal is actually to create commitment to the value that the visit is actually going to provide, right? And to do this, that can be broken down into 4 main pillars. So the first is that your intake team needs to understand that this is sales. They're not just setting appointments. What they're doing is framing the sale. So their energy and their tone is what the homeowner is going to associate with your brand. When most people kind of think of call scripts, they think it's kind of just what they need to say. But a great script isn't just for the words, it's about controlling the kind of emotional flow of that call. Each section is going to have a purpose, and if you miss one of them, the lead might technically book, but mentally they're not going to be as committed, and that's why you see so many no-shows. So let's walk through kind of what that process would look like. So the first step is going to be the greeting, and this is where the first impression is made. It's going to determine how the rest of the call feels. If you pick up the phone flat and robotic, then you're going to sound like every other contractor. We've all heard this. Hey, this is Jacob from XYZ Remodeling. How can I help you today? Right? But if you can open up with something warm and new and confident, you can actually kind of take control of the whole energy of the call. So you want to focus on a pattern interrupt that looks something like this. Hey, this is John. How can I make you smile today? Now, I'm not saying you have to use this exact line specifically, but the goal is to make you sound different, sound like a pro, and just sound like someone who's actually worth getting on the phone with, right? Because at this point, the homeowner is already judging you, not just on what you say, but also on how you say it. Now, once you've kind of set the tone for the call, your job is to start collecting the basic information you need, whether it's their name, their address, email, where they actually heard about you. But the why here isn't just data collection, right? We're trying to build momentum and rapport while naturally kind of creating a flow of a conversation. And if you do this part well, the intake process won't feel like a checklist. It will just be a conversation. So by asking questions like, what made you reach out today? Or, tell me a bit about what's going on in your kitchen, for example. It gives them the space to talk, about, the emotional sides of the reason for them contacting you in the first place, right? So finding out the what is okay, but the how and why we do so is far more important. So what I mean by that is that during this qualification process, we're not just trying to screen people out, we're trying to understand who's involved, what they're trying to do, and how serious they are without killing the flow of the conversation. So instead of drilling your team on specific questions, frame them with more care. So for example, you can say, with projects like this, it's usually helpful to have everybody on the call to make a decision. Is there anybody else that we should include? And this kind of, for example, plants a seed that a two-party appointment is very, very important, and it stops it from becoming an objection later. At this point, right, we want to then look to uncover the pain. So this is where we kind of unlock that real buy-in, because no one reaches out, for the sake of it. It's because something is bothering them. But if you ask closed-end questions like, are you having any issues with your kitchen? They might say no, but you don't know the why as to, if they're frustrated or why they're frustrated, right? And in most cases, these people, they don't want to be sold by you. They want to be heard by you, right? So instead, you want to ask a question like this. What's not working about your kitchen space right now that caused you to reach out? That type of question is how you connect with your prospect, right? Because once they say what their problem is out loud, they've emotionally reconnected with the problem, and it allows you to anchor the rest of the call and move into the next step, which is positioning the appointment, right? It's now time to explain why the appointment matters. Now, most reps are going to say, hey, we'll come out and give you a free estimate. And that sounds to me very transactional. Instead, you want to build value for the visit. So we advise you say something like this. Our consultant is going to come out and do a full walkthrough, show you material options, and give you different pricing scenarios. And this is going to help us build a game plan. It's not just a quote in most cases, it's actually a design consultation. That sounds different, right? And it frames the appointment as something that's actually worth showing up for, not just kind of you trying to sell your services, right? Now, at this point, most reps will say something like, cool, we'll see you guys at 3:00 on Tuesday. But that's not actually a commitment. It's just kind of like a calendar invite, right? You need to confirm that both decision makers are going to be there, reaffirm the time, and frame it as something that they're actually opting into. So if they say, for example, that their spouse isn't going to be there, you can respond with, hey, look, completely get it. What time do you think that they'll usually be home? Because we want to make sure that you both have, everything you need to make a confident decision. So in this case, you're not being pushy, you're just kind of protecting their time and making it, their experience better. So once everything is in place, what a lot of reps forget is that the last 15 seconds of the call is critical. And that's where a lot of them will kind of let the call die flat by saying, okay, thanks, bye. But in that last moment, you want to have the homeowner feeling excited about everything they've heard and feeling like they made the right call. So instead, to end, we'd advise you say something along the lines of this. Hey there, perfect. We really look forward to meeting you and coming by your home. We'll see you on Thursday at 4. And that extra push is going to give you that emotional commitment, not just a logistical agreement of the time. So now that you have the full process, I also want to, say that it's very, very important that you set aside at least 30 to 45 minutes to role play, and not just the scripts, but we want to role play real objections. Things like, that we spoke about earlier. We're just looking for quotes. My spouse won't be there. We want to drill them, but don't just focus on the rebuttals. Focus on the transitions out of them as well, and make sure that your reps are thinking on their feet. We have to remember that you cannot improve anything that you don't measure, right? So it's very important that you're tracking things like time to first contact, the number of appointments booked, the show rate by rep, cancellation and reschedule rates by both source and by rep, right? Because if one rep is consistently underperforming, it's not just, the lead source, it's just the rep themselves, right? And if they are underperforming, it's going to be things like their tone, their energy, and their ability to follow the process, which is making them perform bad. So at the end of the day, if you're paying $100, $200, maybe even $300 per lead in some cases, and you're losing them because the first call kind of felt like they're talking to a front desk, not a sales conversation, then the next step for you is to train your team like closers, because at the end of the day, that is what they are. You need to give them scripts. You need to give them coaching. You need to give them pressure, incentives, and also praise, right? And then you're going to watch your close rates raise before your sales team is even getting involved. So listen, If you want things like kind of our full intake training doc that I use to train teams, including, the call flows, KPI trackings, objection frameworks, then, hit the link in the description or, message me on LinkedIn and I'll send it over. And if this video helped you, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel, because I'll be posting tactical sales and marketing content every week to help home improvement companies close more deals without spending any more money. See you in the next one.